All right,
What announcements first?
we are at Daniel chapter 3, verse 1.
Rick,
Please
Rich,
note,
you want
the
announcements
announcement
first?
of birthdays?
please note that we will not meet next week, okay? We will not meet next week, which is the day before Thanksgiving, because you will all be visibly cooking turkey and things like that.
And it's Chesterfield's, it's Chesterfield.
And it's also Chesterfield's Thanksgiving break, which means we can't use this room. Okay, so that was my big announcement, no class next week, but this is a personal one. I'm a member of the Richmond Choral Society, and on December 7th, we will be having our Christmas concert, Christmas with Richmond Choral Society, on December 7th at 4 p.m. at St. Matthew's Episcopal Church. Tickets will be $18. That's their senior discount. If you want some tickets, see me and I can get you some ahead of time. Or we will be selling them at the door for slightly more, except maybe seniors, I think. And I think it's still $10 for students, children and students. So thank you very much. I've got posters. If you're going any place that you can put one up, I appreciate it. But if you would like to have a brochure of our upcoming concerts, see me too. Thank you.
Here?
Nobody seems to be here who has a birthday. Bob Benton isn't here, right?
Okay. All right. Please note the cookies and carols for the senior fellowship over here, the sign-up sheet. It's exactly what it says. We're going to have refreshments and sing carols. Okay.
December 6th, it's Saturday, from 2 to 4, right here in the Fellowship Hall. And we will have cookies and carols with Stephen Pruitt.
Yes.
And bring a canned good.
Oh,
Bring a canned good.
And
Yes.
if you want, wear a Christmas sweater.
Oh, yeah, we're Christmas stuff.
Yeah, wear a Christmas sweater if you have some. And I'm sure they would want me to mention the giving tree downstairs, okay? If you haven't pulled a ticket off there, you might want to think about that, okay? All right, any other announcements? Okay, let's take a look at, I've lost it already, Jesus, bad one. Okay, I'd like to say Iraq, okay? Contained within Iraq are some very, what we would call holy sites, and, but this is Judah here, Jerusalem here, Damascus here, Babylon is over here, right here, and Nineveh up here. So that's the Babylonian Empire. All right, this is what we're going to look at today, okay? This handsome guy here. Okay, so let's pick it up at chapter 3, verse 1. The backstory is that Daniel has just been placed in a very high position, and Nebuchadnezzar has lavished him with many gifts because Daniel interpreted his dream. So, let's pick it up at chapter 3, verse 1. Somebody read it, please.
Just one.
Chapter 3, verse 1.
King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, and according to this thing it says that a cubit was about 18 inches and 45 centimeters, and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on the plains of Dura in the province of Babylon.
Okay. Keep going.
Oh, keep going? Okay. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent together the satraps, the prefects, and the governors and counselors and treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the justices and the magistrates and the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before that image.
Okay, thank you. All right, so This is not the image we're talking about here, okay? Perhaps Nebuchadnezzar's dream inspired it. The dream that Daniel was able to interpret, the dream of this great statue with the head of gold and the breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, and the feet and toes part iron and part clay. None of the other wise men, so-called astrologers, magicians, could tell the king what his dream was, and therefore they couldn't interpret it either. God gave Daniel the information he needed about what the dream was and what it meant. So you should have picked up a little sheet that has the statue on it. It pops up throughout the rest of Daniel. So we're going to dissect this a little bit. Just looking at it here, Daniel tells him that the head of gold is the Babylonian Empire, symbolized by a lion. And it stands for Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. Which, of course, how do you think Nebuchadnezzar received that information? You know, of course. What else would it be? You know, I'm Nebuchadnezzar. So this was good news for Nebuchadnezzar. However, it also did prophesy that his kingdom would come to an end, and it would be followed by what we call the Medo-Persian Empire. And that is symbolized by a bear. And some interesting things happen during that. Daniel will still be serving as an authority in that empire as well. So Daniel has a long, long life of political service. That will be followed by the Greek Empire. And that will be followed by the Roman Empire. The Greek Empire will be symbolized by a leopard, and that would be Alexander the Great. Okay? And then that would be followed by the Roman Empire. That will be symbolized by a dragon. And of course, that's the empire in which we see Jesus working out his advent, his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection. And that would be followed by a variety of kingdoms symbolized by the 10 toes of the statue. So, what does it all mean? Okay. The gold head, Neo-Babylonian Empire, the silver chest and arms, the Medo-Persian Empire, the bronze belly and thighs, the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. That would bring us to about 330 BC. The iron legs and feet, the Roman Empire, and the toes, later confederation of states controlling the area of the former Roman Empire. So this would bring us from the time of the Babylonian Empire up to the time of Jesus, up to and through the time of Jesus. What does it all mean? Notice that the metals that form the statue are of diminishing value. Okay? They go from gold, which is, of course, always considered the supreme element. And that symbolizes the diminishing power of leaders of the empires. So as these empires supersede one another, their leaders tend to have less power than Nebuchadnezzar has, who's an absolute monarch. The growing toughness of the metals, and as you're probably aware, gold is a very soft metal. It can be easily manipulated. Iron, of course, in that time, was the strongest of metals. So the growing toughness of the metals indicates the increasing duration of the empire. Each empire will last longer than the one that preceded it. The image, not uncommon, was gold-plated, probably of Nebuchadnezzar's name. In Akkadian is Nabu Kaduri Usur, Nabu protect my son. And now we're into what we're talking about here. Now we're talking about the image that Nebuchadnezzar sets up, okay? It's about 90 feet tall, as Ellie read. Maybe, we don't, I'm just thinking here, but maybe inspired by his dream, who knows? Certainly an effort to curry the favor of what was probably Nebuchadnezzar's favorite god among the 4,000 gods of the Babylonian Empire, because if you look at it, if you're a linguist at all, Nebuchadnezzar's name in Akkadian is Nabuchodonosor, which is a tribute to the god Nabu. So Nebuchadnezzar erects this huge statue, and his name means Nabu, protect my son. So, then he issues this order, okay? So let's pick it up at verse 4 and take it to verse 12.
And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and any kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace."
Okay, thank you. What's that? I'm sorry. Okay. In modern times, archaeologists have discovered a brick platform was discovered in the area of the Babylonian Empire. It was 45 feet square and 20 feet high, brick platform. And they're speculating that it may have been the platform for this statue that Nebuchadnezzar erected. What was he doing here? I mean, can you speculate what possible reason could he have to erect this statue?
Pump himself up.
Maybe he was feeling insecure and wanted to
What's
remind everybody who he was.
Okay, yeah, and maybe a tribute to himself, right? Okay. Why else? There's no right answer here, nobody knows. This is speculation. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for kings of that time to do things like this, I think. And as we look at the history of monarchies and so forth, it's not uncommon for kings and queens to do self-aggrandizing things to boost their image, and, because their egos sometimes are enormous. And that certainly fits Nebuchadnezzar. He's an absolute monarch, very powerful. He was also a brilliant general, and responsible for some of the acquisitions, I think, of the Babylonian Empire. So he was not a stupid man, but we'll see as this goes on that he, well, I'll let you judge for yourself. So he puts up this statue. It's been speculated that maybe it was an attempt to bring a focal point for the empire, because the empire is composed of conquered peoples who have been transported to Babylon, among them the Jews from Judah. And it's a rallying point to unify them, to make them start thinking of themselves not as Jews or other captured peoples, but as Babylonians. The effort is at least partially successful. Not just this, but Nebuchadnezzar's other efforts to incorporate the people that he has conquered into his kingdom, because 70 years down the road, when Nebuchadnezzar is defeated and Cyrus of the Medo-Persians is the king, and it's a new empire, God moves Cyrus to send the people back to Judah. Well, some of the people at that time, 70 years down the road, have no interest in going to Judah. They've never lived in Judah. 70 years, think about that. That's 1 3/4 of a generation. So during that 70 years, there are going to be people who were part of the deportations, Daniel among them. There are going to be people who were born in Babylon, have never known anything but Babylon, and possibly identify themselves with that empire and not with Judah. There are going to be people who have, they were not slaves, they were allowed to have businesses and raise families and so forth. So they will have built a life there in Babylon. And when the call goes out, and Cyrus says, okay, the Jews can go back to Judah, a good number of the Jews say, sorry, I don't care about Judah. I was born here, I raised my kids here, I have grandchildren here. I'm not going back there. I never was there, okay? So, the effort is at least partially successful, but these people now identify themselves, and they still identify themselves as Jews, but they have no interest in going back to their homeland. Okay, so that may be a reason. I think the thing it points up to me is it's symbolic of the enormous ego of many of these ancient rulers. They were absolute monarchs, they had absolute power, and it's the rare person who can deal with that without getting an enormous ego. Yes, Debbie?
Do you think it's possible that he also wanted to, with his big ego and getting bigger all the time, he wanted to weed out who wasn't really?
Wanted to weed out those who aren't loyal.
Mhm.
Maybe.
That seems to be the mentality of people that are in a position like his, or that all of a sudden they don't want anybody around that's not totally focused on them.
Right, yeah. And, it's typical of monarchs of this time and politicians today,
Yeah.
that what do? They surround themselves with yes people, okay? People who just confirm for them their own image of themselves that they are the best thing since sliced bread, okay? I've often thought that a really wise, let's take the president, for example, of the United States, a really wise president would include at least one member of the opposing party in his cabinet, so that there'd be somebody who would say, you're a jerk, okay? And at least make the president stop and think, well, is this the best course of action? But not many, by far, the record we have of leaders throughout history has been that they're more likely to surround themselves with people that say, yeah, you're so smart, that's a great idea. Okay, David.
I understand that the Jews were moved to Egypt for enslavement, but makes me wonder who was left behind. And then now, so in Babylon, if the Jews, were they enslaved there, or why were some of them content to stay, or
Yeah.
what were they doing there?
There's probably no doubt that some of them were enslaved, but many of them were just allowed to live their lives. There were a couple of purposes in deporting conquered people. One was to get free labor. So basically what you did was, when you conquered an area, you looked over the population and you did a triage. You figured out who were the people who could be of value to your empire. So you took the younger people, the healthy people, the skilled people, and you moved them. Why did you move them? Well, the other reason was to eliminate or minimize the possibility of rebellion. You leave people in their home area, and there's more of a chance that they're going to rally and try to take back their land. The Romans saw this, okay? The Romans left the Jews in Judah. And what happened? Rebellion after rebellion after rebellion, okay? But you move them out, you take them to your place, and they start identifying with your culture, and they're less likely to do that. So, it wasn't a bad idea, really, when you think about it. So what gets left behind don't have particular skills that are beneficial to you. So you import people from other parts of the empire into there, maybe from your home area. You bring them into the conquered area and they settle it. The Romans did this too with their centurions. Centurions, who I always look at them as kind of the backbone of the Roman army. And if they served honorably and retired, they would be given land in one of the conquered areas. And so we see in the New Testament, we see Paul coming into contact with, Peter coming into contact with a centurion who has become a believer in God. And he was probably a retired centurion who got land from the Roman Empire in that area. And the goal was the centurions, having money and so forth, would begin to influence the population and introduce Roman customs and culture. Okay? Moderately successful, I guess. At least in the case of this guy, he actually got converted a little bit. At any rate, he erects this huge statue, and look at Jeremiah 29:22. Jeremiah 29:22. Jeremiah predicted the Babylonian captivity. His ministry ended in the year of the last deportation and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. So if we pick it up at verse 20, therefore hear the word of the Lord, all you exiles whom I have sent away from Jerusalem to Babylon. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says about Ahab, son of Goliath, and Zedekiah, son of Messiah, and who are prophesying lies to you in my name. I will hand them over to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he will put them to death before your very eyes. Because of them, all the exiles from Judah who are in Babylonia will use this curse. The Lord treat you like Zedekiah and Ahab, whom the king of Babylon burned in the fire. Okay? So this is Jeremiah prophesying that Nebuchadnezzar is going to use this furnace to do away with his enemies. And here we see it playing out. He threatens to throw whoever will not bow down to this image when they hear a musical signal. We see this throughout Daniel. Daniel's writing is interesting. In verse 3, instead of saying all the people in the king's court or all the people in the government, he lists satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials, okay? Instead of saying, when you hear the music of musical instruments, he says, as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, he lists all these things, okay? So it's kind of an interesting style. So that's the deal. The absolute monarch has said, bow down to my statue or die, in a particularly horrific way. All right? Okay. So let's pick it up at verse 7 and go to verse. Did you use verse 12?
No, I did not. You stopped me.
Okay. Okay. You have my permission to go.
Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and any kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up.
Okay.
Makes you wonder, when he keeps listing stuff like that, if somebody required him to have so many words to finish his composition. It has to be a 2 to 3 pages, a minimum of about 1,500 words.
Yeah, we all remember that from English class, don't we? You have to write 500
Yeah,
words.
I mean, we're in the middle of that right now.
You list every musical instrument that's ever
They
been
were pretty
created.
Why
independent, weren't
wasn't Daniel mentioned? I mean, he was kind of the leader of these three.
Yeah, they made Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego I'm just speculating, may have been from administrators in the area from which the Chaldeans came. The word that's used for astrologer here, you may have a note in your Bible, a footnote at the bottom. An alternate translation is Chaldeans. That's also kind of interchangeable with Magi. So we see those terms being used interchangeably in Scripture. Chaldea was an area of the Babylonian Empire. I think I have a map of it here. Let me take a look at it. I just put it in here today. Okay, gotta go for there we go. Yeah. Here
You know
we go.
what's really weird though, is because if it hadn't been for Daniel, they'd have been dead. Because Nebuchadnezzar wanted to kill everybody that had
Yeah.
anything to do with any, all that stuff.
Yeah,
So-
what we're seeing, going to see throughout Daniel is palace intrigue upon palace intrigue, okay? So, this is the ancient world, there's the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Now, this is particularly looking at Ur of the Chaldees, does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Where Abraham was from, and if you notice that, I don't know if you can read this, you probably can't. During the time of Abraham, around 2000 BC, okay? Here's Ur of the Chaldees. This is the Persian Gulf, okay? This is the area that we would call Iraq today. And this would be part of the Babylonian Empire, okay? So this is Ur of the Chaldees. This is the general area where these Chaldeans are coming from. And they pop up throughout Scripture as wise men, astrologers, and so forth. They have this reputation. So, that's the people who are bringing this accusation against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, as Debbie pointed out, why would they want to do that? I mean, think about this. They were that close to being executed, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
By Nebuchadnezzar.
Acted like it was nothing.
You know, he called their bluff. If you remember, he said, hey, I had this dream, guys. I need you to interpret for me. And they say, okay, tell us what it was. And he goes, no. If you are what you say you are, you should be able to tell me. If you're in touch with God, you should be able to tell me what the dream was and then interpret it. And they go, well, nobody can do that. Nobody can do that. And then Daniel does just that. And Nebuchadnezzar rescinds the order to kill all the wise men, astrologers, and magicians. They were all very toast, them and their families as well. So because of Daniel, they all are saved. Daniel gets elevated as to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to leadership positions, higher leadership positions. And now these same people are coming back and trying to stick the knife in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So again, it lifts up the whole thing about sin, okay? Here's people who owe their very lives to these Jewish men. And now they're trying to stick the knife in them, okay? It's scary, it's sad, it's scary. Okay, so they make this accusation. Again, why? Well, they're probably angry that these upstart young Jewish men have been elevated to powerful positions of leadership within Nebuchadnezzar's empire. And they're seeking to undermine them, and they see their chance here. Let's pick it up in verse 13.
Furious.
Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and pipe, all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. If you cannot worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?"
Okay, so, what jumps out at you from that section? So,
He explained himself very well.
in great detail,
I mean,
okay?
they couldn't say, I didn't understand your question.
Mhm. Yeah. What else jumps out at you?
As soon as you hear that music, you better fall down.
Yeah. What's unusual about this?
Well, they gave him another chance.
Yeah.
This absolute egomaniacal monarch is giving them another chance. Some would say that's not good governance, right? Some would say if you don't punish these guys, everybody's gonna think you're soft. You better do what you said and throw them in the furnace. But, so what's going on here?
The last sentence is really interesting. And who is the God who will deliver you?
Yeah. So he throws down the gauntlet. What God is going to save you? What does it tell us about Nebuchadnezzar's relationship with these three guys that he gives them a second chance?
He respects them.
Yeah. They're associated with Daniel. Daniel's been of help to him. Daniel has done something that nobody else was able to do. He's reluctant to lose these three men. They're of value to him, and he's reluctant to lose them. Now, what does it say about Nebuchadnezzar's leadership that he even issues this edict? What does it say about him as a leader?
He's very detail oriented.
He's very detail-oriented. He lists all the instruments that you hear, okay?
He also remembers clearly what Daniel said and who Daniel gave credit to for what he did.
Yeah, okay, he maybe remembers what Daniel did and who Daniel gave credit to, okay? He deals in extremes, doesn't he? Okay? This is kind of an extreme punishment for not bowing down to this particular statue, isn't it? We're going to throw you in a furnace. Okay. Again, it indicates the degree of power and authority that Nebuchadnezzar had. And he just assumed that everybody would do this because, hey, he's Nebuchadnezzar, and he can have you thrown into the furnace. Okay? So, and now he's kind of caught. He's kind of painted himself into a corner because three people that he values won't do it. They won't do it. So he's kind of in an untenable position as a leader because he's made this absolute dictate, and now he doesn't want to implement it. So he gives him a second chance. I just think that's very revealing. He's very angry, furious with rage, and that's something else we're going to see about Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is a very, he was a great general, but he seems to be governed a lot by his emotions. He has emotional responses to things, and this is no exception.
I think you also had a clean house, if I remember correctly. All these people were being brought up and trained to be part of the court. And if you had any dissension in this court, you had to be erased.
Okay, maybe want to clean house, make sure you only have loyalists in his court. So, and again, these are important positions that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have. And he's probably angry with them because he considers them ungrateful. Here he's given them high positions, they're young men, and he's given them high responsible positions, and now they're resisting his leadership. So he's furious with rage. And let's pick it up then at verse 16.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up."
Okay. It's a great paragraph, isn't it? Okay, response.
When was the last time anybody spoke to him like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nobody speaks to the king this way. Nobody. What else jumps out at you?
Well, I would hope that I had heard from God to be sure. This is my word, I will save you. But then after they say he would save them, they also said, but even if he does not. So they realize the danger that they're in, and they realize that this could be the end, but they're standing up for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about you, but this speaks very strongly to my prayer life. Okay? I mean, I pray about things that I think I need or my loved ones need all the time. And it's very easy to take Jesus' promises, God's promises, too literally. For example, where Jesus says, whatever 2 or 3 of you agree on believing, you shall have it. Ask anything in my name, and you shall have it. Okay, it's very easy to say, man, I always wanted a Ferrari. Jesus, I'd like a Ferrari, please, and I'd like it next Tuesday, delivered to my house. Okay?
Then you got a Mustang.
Get busy on it. All right? And then be angry when it doesn't show up.
Like a Mustang.
You got a Mustang. And then be angry because, hey, you said. What always has to be the caveat with that?
Thy will be done.
Thy will be done. Look at the Lord's Prayer. Where in the prayer does that come? Very early. Very early. And that always has to be in our mind, in our hearts, when we pray. Thy will be done. And I love these 3 guys for the way they say that. Because what are they saying with these words about their relationship with God?
Total trust.
Say again.
Total trust.
Total trust. Total trust. They're saying obedience to God, the God that we worship, the only true God, by the way, is more important than anything else. More important than even dying in a fiery furnace. They've done studies over the years, many years, because that's what people do. And they think of these questions to ask, and they say, what's the worst possible way to die? And fire always is in the top 3. being burned to death is always within the top 3 of those surveys. And I mean, I can hardly think of a worse way to die myself. You know, that's a terrible way to die. But these guys, I love it, you know. They say, well, God is able to do that. He can serve, is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, okay? But even if he does not, we're not gonna bow down to your statue.
They had the faith of Abraham.
Yeah. Yeah. God says, that son I gave you, who you wanted so badly, you waited for so long, Abraham, he's not 17 now, so I want you to sacrifice him to me. And Abraham says, load the donkey. And off they go. And comes very close to him. I mean, he's literally standing over Isaac with the knife. Okay? And God says, no.
But even if it's Abraham or these guys or Jesus, it's all a Garden of Gethsemane moment.
Yeah.
Hard to stand up and actually say that without a lot of trepidation and.
Yeah.
But you go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, profound faith. Just profound faith.
It reminds me of many years ago. I guess some of y'all probably, or most of y'all probably remember it. I don't remember which school it was, but it was one of the first school shootings that we had. And the little girl was either 12 or 13, and the gunman actually took the gun and said, "Denounce God." And she said no, and he killed her.
Yeah.
And that particular killing just echoed over so many people, because of what she stood for.
Yeah, that was the one in Colorado. I can't
Colorado,
remember
yeah.
what the name of it was.
Columbine.
Columbine.
I can't remember, but I remember the incident.
And he had stuck the gun in her face and said, "Denounce Christ," and she wouldn't do it and died. Wow. Gotta admire faith like that. Okay, anything else about that section? Okay, let's take it from verse 19 to 23.
The Shadrach and Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and throw them into the blazing fire. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace so hot, that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace.
Okay. Comments?
He lost some of his strongest soldiers.
Say again?
He lost some of his strongest soldiers.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that upset him,
Yeah,
just to get it started.
yeah. What
He was
does
so
that,
mad.
he lost some of his best soldiers, okay? Yeah. What does that say about Nebuchadnezzar's ego? Everything has to be sacrificed to his ego. How dare they not obey me? Especially after I gave them a second chance. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this guy's a classic case of it, all he knows is what he wants. And he's not a wise man. He's governed by his emotions, he's governed by his ego. And all he sees right now is these 3 young Jewish men have opposed him. And he has to show that he's stronger. And so even though they're valuable to his administration, even though it involves the sacrifice of some of his strongest soldiers, he goes through with this. This statute that we're talking about, this now, it proposes an open challenge to Shadrach's, Meshach's, and Abednego's God. The theme verse of this section is verse 15. Just going back here a little bit. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? And I don't know what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thinking, but it might have been something along the lines of, you'll see. You'll see. Note Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's acceptance of God's will for them and their absolute faith and courage. Chapter 20, verse 7, not chapter 20, where did that come? Verse 20. Verse 20. We come to this section where it says the furnace was heated 7 times hotter. Okay? Again, whenever we come across numbers in the Bible, we have to ask ourselves, literally or symbolic? Literal or symbolic? This may simply mean, 7 sometimes means as great as. Okay? So it may be a symbolic way of saying they heated the furnace as hot as it could have been heated. Okay? No, again, as was pointed out, note the absolute lack of concern on Nebuchadnezzar's part for his soldiers. In the Greek translations of Daniel is included the Song of the 3 Children. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar counts 4 men. Okay, that's what's coming up here. All right? Okay, let's pick it up at verse 24.
Then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men who he tied up and threw into the fire?" And they replied, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th, looks like a son of the gods."
Yeah, go ahead.
Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here."
Take it to verse 28.
So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and all the rest of those folks grabbing around them. And they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was the hair on their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them.
Okay. Okay. So, not what Nebuchadnezzar expected. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace, and we don't know what the structure of the furnace was. You know, it depends whether it had viewing ports or whatever. He could see into the furnace. And he says, wait a minute, didn't we throw 3 guys in there? I see 4. And one of them looks like a son of the gods. We don't know what that means. Maybe there was an aura around this individual. We don't know. That was from the last time I taught this class. Obviously an angel that God has sent to care for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I love the details here. They come out of the furnace. And how does Nebuchadnezzar address them? Verse 26.
Son of the Most High God.
Son of the Most High God.
Servants.
All right? Very similar to what he said after Daniel was able to interpret his dream. Oh, your God is the Most High God. Now, again, this is not a come to Jesus moment, okay? Nebuchadnezzar has not become a dedicated believer of only the one true God. He's just giving voice to the fact that of all the gods out there, of all the gods we worship, your God is number 1. Which is, better than nothing, but is not the same as saying there's only one. He's just saying, oh man, you guys worship the most powerful God, the Most High God. And I love the details in Daniel, the little details like listing off all the musical instruments, listing off the names of all the authorities and so forth. But this one I especially loved, that they're not a hair of their heads was singed, their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. That's incredible, okay? And again, putting ourselves in that moment. We've all heard this story in Sunday school, so it's not new to us. But maybe details of it are, you know, putting yourself in that situation. What does Nebuchadnezzar make of this? Not only do these three guys come out of the furnace completely unharmed, which has already killed some of his best soldiers, but their clothes don't even smell of smoke. You know? It's an amazing moment. And Nebuchadnezzar is suitably impressed. Let's pick it up at verse 28.
Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon.
Okay, so notice Nebuchadnezzar's use of hyperbole. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar doesn't seem capable of just simply stating something. It has to be surrounded by all this exaggeration. Okay? Okay, let's look at Matthew 24:9. Matthew 24:9.
Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all the nations because of me.
Okay, so this is Jesus speaking. Again, as I've often said, Jesus never sugarcoats what it means to follow him. He's also always deadly serious, deadly honest about what it means to follow him. And he says, you're going to be persecuted, and some of you will be put to death. Matthew 10:28.
Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell.
Okay, so again, you know, but don't worry about that. This life is not the most important thing. Faith in Jesus, faith in the Father, that's the most important thing, because that's eternal. Whatever they do to you here on earth cannot compare with what awaits you, with having a relationship with God. Matthew 6:33.
But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Okay. Put God first.
Oh.
Put God first. In everything in life, put God first. And everything else will be taken care of. And you will enjoy an eternal relationship with God. That's the promise. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego seem to understand this. They firmly believe and have put their lives on the line to demonstrate it, that there's nothing more important than their relationship with God and the worship of the one true God and being faithful to him. And God is faithful to them as well. And then finally, Isaiah 43, 1-3.
But now this is what the Lord says. He who created you, Jacob, he who formed you, Israel. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior.
Okay. And here we see this demonstrated. God is faithful to his promise. He sustains these men in an unspeakable situation and brings them out safely. Okay, so what's the lesson here in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace? Don't play with matches.
Keep your faith in times of trouble.
Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Trust God even when it looks like there is no hope. And if there was ever a situation which looked like there was no hope, this was one. These three young guys are standing before the most powerful person in their world. The person who has the power of life and death over them simply by speaking it. And they're making him angry. And it's not that they don't care. I'm sure they would choose, if they had a choice, they would choose to be somewhere else doing something else. But they're in this situation, and they are faithful. They are faithful to God. And he demonstrates his faithfulness to them, and gives us a story that we are still talking about more than 2,000 years later. Okay. All right.